Today, February 19, 2021, the Board of Trustees of Colerain Township convened for the executive sessions. Mr. Baker, would you call roll call, please?
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Here?
Mr. Waller?
Okay.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Mills, you ready to go for the executive sessions and reason why we are going for the executive sessions?
Yes, sir. I recommend that the board go into executive session in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G1, to discuss the employment and compensation of public employees. Also, in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G2, to consider the purchase of property for public purposes. Also, in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G3, to discuss pending or imminent litigation with the township attorney. Also, in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G4, to discuss collective bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation. And also in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G8, to consider confidential information relating to specific business strategy and to discuss negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting requests for economic development assistance.
Thank you.
I motion that we go into executive sessions for the reasons detailed by Mr. Mills.
I second it. Any discussions?
Not from me.
Okay. Go ahead, roll call, please.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
The Board of Trustees will adjourn for the executive sessions. We should be returned soon. Thank you. Executive sessions, Mr. Baker, would you make a roll call, please?
Mr. Unger?
Here.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Here?
Mr. Waller?
Here.
Okay.
Anything to report?
Mr. Mills, anything to report?
No, sir.
We have motion to,
I think the pledge is next.
we don't need a motion no, to meeting.
I think you usually just take a roll call.
Yeah, roll call, okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, let's, it's 7 o'clock. Let's, February 9th, 2021, the Board of Trustee of Colerain Township, and we'll start now. And let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's stand, remain stand, a silent moment of prayer. Let us keep praying for our veterans and also our soldiers, our first responders. Also, let us pray for our senior citizens. This weekend is it's coming to celebrate everyone to love each other, and let us pray for everyone keep safe from COVID-19, be safe and healthy. Let's pray for our children. Above all, let's pray for our country. We all get united to love each other and do our service to our great country on the earth. Thank you. Be seated, please. The next on the agenda is fiscal office approval of minutes.
Thank you, Board. The only thing I have is request the Board to approve the minutes of the Board of Trustees meeting from January 12th, 2021.
I would motion that we approve the minutes from January 12th, 2021.
I second it. Okay, any discussions?
I sent you one typographical error on that. Did you get that, Jeff?
I did. It was corrected.
No other discussion from me.
Matt, anything?
None.
Okay. If there's no comments, Mr. Baker, roll call, please.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
That's all I have, Board.
Thank you. Then the next on the agenda is a presentation. The presentation by Muni Reg about vacant building maintenance license program.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Rajagopal. I'd like to invite a representative from the company MuniReg. MuniReg is a company that we are evaluating for administration of our vacant building maintenance license program and our vacant property foreclosure program. The work that this company does is they administer that for us, and given the reorganization that occurred in the planning department, this is we're looking for ways to get great results and outcomes, while at the same time being aware of everyone's work constraints. So thank you for joining us, and tell us about MuniReg.
And you can take off your, this does broadcast, so it might be easier to.
Got it.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. As mentioned, we had a couple of conversations with a little background on MuniReg, so hopefully I can share some of that with you tonight as well. And obviously, any questions you have, please jump in. My name is Michael Halpern. I work for, I founded MuniReg a couple of years ago up in the Cleveland area. I used to work for a company called Safeguard Properties for about 18 years. Safeguard is the largest company that just takes care of zombie foreclosures, let's just call it that, working for banks and mortgage companies, taking care of these properties throughout the foreclosure crisis on behalf of the banks. My last 8 or so years at Safeguard, I spent as the Director of Community Initiatives, and what that meant was really interacting with local governments on all levels, elected officials, but primarily code enforcement and building officials, helping them address some of the frustrations they had with vacant properties, abandoned properties, zombie foreclosures. A lot of the sentiments and the frustration centered around the inability to identify who the right parties are, communicate with the right parties, and obviously as the role that I had at Safeguard, I was in the perfect position to help them with that. So it was really a lot of education of how the banking system works, how the loan servicing industry works as it applies to property maintenance on vacant abandoned properties, why banks do what they do, why sometimes they don't do what they're supposed to do, and how interact with local governments. Huge disconnects across the country, communities large and small, and it was my job to try to reach out and bridge that gap between those two entities. That involved traveling the country, speaking directly to municipal governments like yourself, but also regional, state, and national associations, which provided me with some insight and some relationships and experiences in regards to addressing vacant abandoned properties. At the end of, towards the end of my tenure at Safeguard, the foreclosure crisis happened, and a lot of communities were enacting these types of ordinances, these vacant property registration ordinances, licensing. From the bank's perspective, one of the major concerns was the lack of uniformity, so I would go out and work with communities on trying to increase uniformity among the various ordinances between communities, which is a win-win. If you can get uniformity, the theory would be it'll be easier to comply with the banks. Generally, the information that's required is similar from community to community, and it was kind of a win-win solution that we were trying to achieve. While I was there and speaking to communities, what I saw was a lot of variances among these ordinances across the country. So Colerain obviously has the program in place. You've already surpassed that first hurdle of getting that enacted and implementing that program. So you're receiving results and you're getting compliance. Communities across the country, they don't have it, and some of them that don't have it, having complete ordinances, or even, this does not apply to Colerain, but there's actually some communities that still have languages that put them at legal risk. It's a very nuanced niche area that I'm talking about, but this is why I spent 20 years. So I was able to identify and work with communities to do that. The other area that I was able to identify was that properties being registered with communities was happening. There was some level of compliance. However, was that the best approach? A recent study by the Center for Community Progress I've worked with and presented with, very prestigious organization, think tank in the housing arena. They did a survey, and they still list the VPRs, vacant property registration ordinances, as a positive tool. But under the disadvantages, they say that communities generally receive moderate, mediocre compliance. I think that the exact quote is something along the lines of, they think 50% is high. Okay, and that was really in line with what motivated me to found Unireg in the beginning of 2019. So the tool is a good tool. Community that doesn't have the tool should have the tool. If you're familiar with it, I don't want to go into too much details. You have it in your toolbox already. It's a good tool. It's utilized by over 100 communities across Ohio, many, many more across the country. If you don't have it, if you do have it, how do you maximize it, right? And what typically happens is, again, without knowing the specifics of Colerain, but generally speaking, it's assigned to a staff member, and it becomes another process. And these are third-party fees that are being assigned that come along with these properties, property registrations, and there's an opportunity to maximize that by removing that first initial step of the administration of these registries, and to allow the existing resources to focus elsewhere. The significant time that is exerted on identifying non-compliance, and for the ones that come in and complied with, that's fine, but there's that third step. And what the report from the Center for Community Progress showed was the reality that oftentimes existing staff don't have the bandwidth to, not they don't have the capabilities, they don't have the bandwidth to proceed further. And the business model that we developed incents us. We would only get compensated with the registrations. That's an inherent incentive for us to go out and maximize. So to wrap it up with, if we just use round numbers, if there was 100 vacant properties in a community and compliance was at 35%, you've got 35 vacancies. Generally, 35 registrations, excuse me. Those 35 registrations is a level of compliance. It's a pretty good level of compliance to a certain extent. And that's what gets passed up the food chain. The other 65 will get a cursory glance because they just don't have the bandwidth. We're inherently incented to go at least touch those as well. So the idea behind the conversations that we had weren't to make comprehensive changes to any of the ordinances. We've reviewed these ordinances. I've looked at hundreds of ordinances from across the country. I'm always a big advocate for taking the best practices. There are some small nuances to maximize. We can talk about that if you would like. To just broaden the scope of the vacant properties based off national best practices. If I'm not mistaken, these ordinances were enacted in 2013, give or take. There's definitely some small tweaks, but it's based off industry best practices and obviously the information behind it. The idea behind it, again, is not to take a code enforcement official's job. It's to make them more efficient. It's to have them focus on what he or she can do, and only he or she can do, which is the inspections of the property, to help them free up the bandwidth to think outside the box and to take properties that need some micromanaging to be micromanaged, and to have the ability to do that. And finally, one of the things that I feel that very strongly that as a resource to a community is my experience. And I don't offer a silver bullet. I wish I had the silver bullet to blight. It would make a lot of communities very happy if I had that, but I have a long history of connecting dots and working in those spheres, and some success in helping communities do that as well.
So, excuse me, so when is a building vacant?
Good question.
For instance, we have a national chain restaurant here in Colerain Township that has had their location shut down for months now because the governor will not allow that type of buffet restaurant to open. Right. I don't necessarily want to go penalize those people because they can't operate their business model under the current governor mandates. So is that building, it appears vacant, right, but now that I know why it is, I certainly don't want to punish them or do anything to stop them from eventually reopening. So when is, just using that as an example, what is your definition of a vacant building?
It's an absolutely great example, especially in today's climate with COVID. I'm a big believer, big advocate, even to my detriment, to have strong exemptions in any type of ordinance. When there's an exemption, I'm not getting paid. As I said, I only get paid by the registration fee. In a case like that, absolutely warrants an exemption. You have a hard case where, because of COVID, they're good apples, they're communicating directly with the internal staff. There should be an exemption process, and that's something that we can run as well. And obviously, the final decisions would be made by the municipality, but we've done that with other clients, and in a case like that, they file for an exemption, and then they don't have to pay the fee. But it's good to have that information on hand, and I try to be as transparent and as honest as possible. You know, we don't have the police powers to twist arms, but the idea is to provide you, when I say you, I mean, it's really the boots on the ground, the code officials, with a reference tool, with a tool that can make their lives easier. And at the crux of it all is taking the idea being which you've already accomplished with the registry, which is taking a reactive process and making it proactive. You've already done that. Now we're taking it, the idea being taking it and enhancing it even further, and taking away that one piece of it that they don't necessarily have to be bothered with, and they're not incented to go above and beyond. And then, so to your point.
So we would report to you, hey, this particular building is vacant. We haven't been able to find an owner to take care of it for us. Is that kind of what your business is?
Absolutely. And we would proactively try to identify those even before you bring it to our attention. So we would work with local, obviously working with the municipality, advising us who are the community development corporations, who are the block club captains, who are the faith-based groups, folks that care about the community, and even some folks that probably come into chambers over here and discuss some of the issues they have with properties in the community. Those are people that care, and there'll be an education that we're working with the township to help them with this process. When you have a vacant property that pops up and you want it to be addressed, the first step, regardless of whether it's administered in-house or it's utilized a company like the Community Reg, is they need to have someone to talk to. Okay, so if I'm working with the township, then I'm going to say call me. I'll start the process, and then the township will have access to that information 24/7. If I can't get compliance, as I said, I can't twist someone's arm. My goal is to give you as much information as possible. So if it means that I've identified the owner's Sally Smith in Los Angeles, you'll have that information, you'll have the phone number, you'll have the email. I will make that outreach to try to get the registration complete. If I can't do that, then at least you'll have that. And those are steps that are helping the code officer. They don't have to worry about that. And obviously escalations as well. If you have to take them to court, you have to take some legal action. You have that. Those first steps are removed. And as I said, it's not money necessarily coming out of the township's budget. Obviously, that you have something you have in. We've talked about the fees, and I'm sure you've filled the trustees in, or you can in the future. But generally speaking, it's not an additional expense you have to do, because the compensation for this work is being covered by these registration fees.
And this goes for single-family residential also?
So yeah, absolutely. The idea behind it applies across the board for residential, commercial, industrial, even rentals. The same concept. Why should the code officer have to chase after a landlord? So the philosophy, the theory behind the business model works across the board. The real value, to be frank, for the community is when you're dealing with zombie foreclosures, when you're dealing with banks, you kind of got to try not to be too haughty, but say you have someone who has 20 years experience in this field as a resource to you.
In properties that are listed for sale, say right now there's a vacant house on my street that is listed for sale and they're waiting till they get their price, and it's been empty for 3 months, that's not a property you would go after?
So, exemption, file for an exemption. Have the data. Generally speaking, if there's a for sale sign, you have a point of contact. The idea is to have a point of contact. So that would be something that I would request an exemption, and hopefully get the exemption, make it as easy for them as possible. We have a website, and just to make it as...
But just to be clear, you're not chasing the MLS or anything?
No.
So if something's been sitting for sale for over a year, because the person just can't get their price.
Correct. So from my perspective, valid exemptions would be actively marketing a property, veterans who are overseas, summer homes, snowbirds. I forgot we're in Ohio for a second. So snowbirds, if someone goes to Florida for 3 months, the idea is not to punish anybody by having them pay fees. And I don't think it's, just my opinion, I don't feel it's unreasonable to request information, right? And it's being shared, it's not necessarily personal information, it's an email, it's a phone number, it's just contact information that the house is vacant. And if it's utilized correctly and the marketing of the program is done correctly, so for example, the snowbirds, when I'm talking to them, I'm saying, and they say to me, why should I register? I'm like, this information is going to be shared with the police department, right? I'm not going to say they're going to go inspect your property, but wouldn't you want the police to drive by your property once a week just to make sure everything's okay? And if something isn't okay, right? I know you're probably paying a property manager, hopefully they are, to plow the snow and just keep an eye on the property while they're in Florida. But what's the harm of having the police officer? There's a lot of ancillary benefits that can be we can leverage from other communities of what they do. So there's a lot of potential for exemption. Someone's actively rehabbing it. If someone's going to come into this building and sit across from a township official and say, here's my story, I'm actively maintaining, I'm here, this is my number, when there's an issue, I'm doing the best I can, that's an exemption to me. That's a good apple. Fill out the form, let us have your information, let's have it in a consolidated location, and as long as there's no issues, we're good, right? Keep it maintained, don't let it be a blight on the community, don't let it be a safety concern or security concern for the community, and we understand, we'll work with you. A lot of what I believe in is it works both ways, and that comes from the banking world. My role in the banking world was very much trying to be that, to bridge the gap between the two worlds. And when I would get up and give a presentation, I don't want to digress too much, but I would say to building officials, elected officials, who thinks banks don't care about their properties in their community? And everybody would shoot their hand up. And what I would say to them is, right, wrong, or indifferent, good apples, bad apples, but that vacant property in your community is the collateral on a mortgage. It's in their financial best interest to maintain that property. Whether they do, they don't, that's a whole other story, and that's what the presentation's about. But the underlying principle, there is common goals, and that's what I try to really work on, to find common goals. And with properties like this, I think there is a common goal, and to educate, but this is all time consuming. And these are things that, how I earn my money, by doing stuff like this, as opposed to having the code official or the building official answer these types of questions. Let's, be fair. The biggest hurdle, to be frank, is the township already has, if I'm not mistaken, maybe the highest fees in registration fees in the state. So the fees are usually the primary. There's still many across the country that's significantly higher, but that's usually the greatest concern from the constituents is the fees, and as you mentioned, these properties that really should not have to register and pay those fees. So, I fully understand where you're coming from, the concern that, in my drive to get registration fees, I may, target.
Right, and I would just want to watch out for, because everybody eventually passes their property on at some point at the end of their life or something, and a property might be held up in probate for a while, and I do not want to go after those properties. I'm more thinking of some specific commercial properties that have been sitting for a long time vacant. Yep. But I mean, just in the course of life, everybody's property, none of us are going to be in the same house 100 years from now. Right. Every property eventually changes hands, and it might sit empty for a few months during that time, and I just want to make sure we're not.
Every property has its unique story, absolutely, and the way I view it, so you get a little understanding from my perspective, is I view kind of three buckets. Residential, commercial fall into these three buckets. One is, let's just call them zombie foreclosures, where there's a bank involved, so the property's been abandoned by the homeowner, it's vacant, and now there's a bank involved, so now there's an interested party to talk to. The second one is, let's just call them LLCs. Maybe somebody in the community or out of the community owns a second property, as investment property, whatever the case is, and the third one is probate. So you got three different buckets of properties, and when in regards, I would assume, based off my experience in this world, that your data would show that the primary compliance you're getting currently is going to be with bucket one, and it trickles down, and bucket three, which is the probate properties, you're probably not even getting any compliance. And the reality is, maybe you shouldn't, because homeowner passes away, it's not in the heir's name yet, they're not the legal owner, they shouldn't have to do that. What we do is we're gonna touch every property. We're gonna reach out and I try to identify and give it a character and an identity to see what it is. And, you know, this is something I don't like, I don't like setting unreal expectations, and I don't like making false promises. But I have had some levels of success, and in this context, one of my crowning achievements was with one of my clients where we identify vacant property, we identify it's in probate, and we were able to contact an heir. The heir of the property, one of the heirs, gets a letter from me and says, calls me up and says, no one's called me about this property in 2 years. I was surprised to get your letter. I'm curious, what's going on? So I said, look, the city has a registration requirement, and I know you're not the heir, but I don't know where it's in the process. Maybe it's going through probate. I'm advising you that if it goes through probate, you become the legal owner. And he said, I'm not taking it through probate. The bank reclaimed the property. My parents passed away, and the bank took the property back. And this is what I said to him. I said, please provide me your email. He gave me his email. I sent him the copy of the release of the lien. And then I said to this individual, I said, look, you have 3 options. You have option number 1, you can keep on going on with your life. You don't have to do anything with this property. You have no legal obligation. I'm not a lawyer, but you don't have any legal obligation to take any action on this property. But that really doesn't do the city any good, my client any good. Option number 2 is you can take it through probate. It's going to cost you whatever it's going to cost you, but you now know you have a property unencumbered by a mortgage, so you basically get a free home besides for those costs. That's option, and that's again a positive for the community because hopefully we'll put it to productive use. Or number 3 is the community has a land bank. I'm sure they'll love to hear from you and maybe even work with you, and to try to get it back to productive use. That's a property that was sitting in that community for 2 years. No one really said anything to it. The code officer is a great guy, didn't have the bandwidth to have that conversation. I documented the conversation with the heir, sent it to him, took that email, flipped it to the city official, and said this was the conversation that happened, and left it in their hands. Each property is unique, and sometimes it needs some creative out-of-the-box solutions. A lot of time, it just needs time, and that's part of what we offer.
Well, not to dominate the conversation.
No, go ahead.
But I think I know what it is you want to do, and I'm fine with that. I think if you could communicate to Jeff and give him a couple communities where you're already doing this type of work, I'd love to, sort of reach out to them and see how the program's going for them. And since this is just listed as a presentation tonight, we're not taking any action on it. Is that correct?
That's right. My intention was to make the presentation tonight and then have it for your consideration in March.
Okay, and so if we have any questions, you can leave us with your phone number and.
I'll give you my card.
Not to, I don't know if Matt and Raj have anything, but I think I know what it is you want to do. What my position is on it is, I want to be really cautious about, every residential structure. Eventually, I'm leaving mine, probably in a box, but eventually, and I don't want to put a burden on my heirs because it takes a few months to get things straightened out. So, I mean, obviously, I just want to make sure there's some mechanism to leave those folks alone. And, when I think of some big vacant properties sitting on Colerain Avenue, those are the ones that I think that you would be a good fit for.
Yep,
And
absolutely. And
I just want to make sure we're not stepping on
Absolutely.
our citizens and our homeowners.
Absolutely, I fully understand, and I think another thing that I believe I bring to the table is, as an asset to a community, is the national view. And what I mean by that is that we're monitoring and tracking trends and solutions in other communities as well. So the issue you mentioned now, it happens to be a solution that South Euclid came up with up north by me, but it could have just as easily been Los Angeles. I don't know if I sent you on that email. It's a very creative out-of-the-box solution that they came up with, and I share that with that's part of my goal as well. Even though obviously Colerain is unique, you have a lot of the issues that you have are shared across the country, and if it works somewhere else, let's implement it here. If it works here, I'm going to sure as heck try to implement it with my other clients as well. I think the idea is to mitigate blight as much as we can. So I think I bring that perspective as well. I think that would be a good asset for the community.
And we could give you a list of stuff to go after, like, here, start with these 20 and see how you do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The first is going to the water department for vacancies, going to the building official. you know, and as I said, mentioned earlier, reaching out to these entities or individuals that have a desire to see their community look and be a better community, and who care. And you folks know better than I would who those are. So, you know, that's where the outreach starts. Build this comprehensive list, and then go to town and, you know, identify who they are. Do they require registration? If yes, try to get them to register. And if it's an exemption, try to get the exemption.
Thank you, sir. Like Dan said, also goal, 2021 is our main goal is a beautification, the Colerain. And we want to make sure that we pick the right people to be a part of our program and plan to do a great job. And said we'll send us your background, your reference. We got to be very careful.
Absolutely, and independent from the communities you mentioned, the clients.
Right.
You know, I believe I've shared with Jeff some of the personal references as well. Alan Malik, if you just Google Alan Malik Community Development, that's MALLACH. He's one of the nation's leading experts in community development, former director of code in Trenton, New Jersey. He works for the Center for Community Progress. Glowing, I've known him for years, and as I said, one of the nation's leading experts on this, and that's a personal reference as well, and there's plenty more where that came from. So I've worked very hard to have that to build that reputation of being an honest broker. When I was working with the banks, I would walk in and I was the subject of scorn, as I said. Everybody's like, I'm working for the evil banks that don't care about the communities, and I can proudly say that I have a lot of friends in the code enforcement, personal friends in the code enforcement field and in the municipal field as well. So hopefully that will all show in any due diligence the township does.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming in. I have a couple additional questions, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you for sharing your time this evening. So when we talk about this registry, is that something that we have to have already, or okay?
You have you refer to it as a licensing program, and then for the vacant properties, and then you have a vacant and foreclosed registry. So
if someone's not compliant, who goes out and finds them? Us or your representative? Or
So if someone's not compliant, we initiate that process, as I mentioned earlier. So let's just say it's an LLC out in California. We'll work to identify A, who that LLC is, B, who's the point of contact, and get the contact information, communicate with them directly to try to get them to register. If they're non-compliant, then we provide that back to the municipality, and then the municipality makes the decision. That decision of whether to escalate it needs to be in this building. Especially with your concerns you mentioned earlier. You don't want, that's one of the protections that inherently we put in place to make sure that we're not the wild, wild west and threatening people to go to court and stuff like that. That's not how we operate, and it's not sensical for anybody. So
just so I understand, we need to bring the subject properties to you, and then your process takes over.
Yes, with the caveat that hopefully we can preempt it by having these outreach to the community and just direct communication with the code officers. So the idea being, big picture, even without MuniRec, right now, the idea of your program that you have in place is that if you get a constituent call on a vacant property, your code officer is not starting the process of trying to identify whether he or she has sent legal notices or whatever. The idea of this registry is click on a button, okay, 123 Main Street, this is who I need to speak to. You have compliance. There's open data. I've seen some of the data on the website. Without knowing all the details of the intricacies and getting my hands involved, I don't know what level of compliance that is, but all I can say is that theoretically, the argument that I gave about the general bandwidth of internal staff to go above and beyond is usually limited, and then the study from the Center for Community Progress validated that. So the idea would hopefully be to increase those numbers, that if you're getting 35% compliance, as I said, we cannot guarantee 100% compliance. The properties in probate, we're not going to get them. There's going to be some folks that are just not going to comply with the registration. They're going to be opposed to the fee, even though they should register. Those are conversations, and obviously those are things you're dealing with now. I mean, there's non-compliant, and you internally make a decision without my involvement. Do we want to, escalate this? Do we not want to escalate this? Do we want to take them to court for non-compliance? Do we want to issue fines, penalties? Those are daily decisions, independent of MuniReg's involvement. So the idea is really just to increase that initial number. First of all, to help you with some minor tweaks to expand it, to make sure you're capturing all the properties you want to capture, which, again, just minor tweaks, but I think it'll be productive for the community. We've had some of those discussions. Just for example, I think this is a good example. I think, especially nobody knows what's going to happen now with COVID when the moratoriums on foreclosure and evictions end, but your vacant and foreclosed registry that you have right now is, I believe, just based off my experience, was created with blight in mind, okay, obviously. So the requirement to register is the property has to be vacant and a notice of foreclosure has to be filed, okay? Well, across the country, one of the best practices is as soon as a notice of default is filed, whether occupied or vacant, okay? So you're not capturing those occupied properties like other communities. Now, the benefit of that is twofold. Number one, it's kind of a heads up that this property is going down the process and may eventually become vacant, okay? So that's the small little benefit for the flight. But the real benefit, if the information, the data is utilized correctly, you now have proactively, not you going to have to find it, not reactively, proactively, the information coming into you that Jim and Sally Smith at 123 Main Street have had a foreclosure filing against them, the property is occupied, that information doesn't go to the code officer, it goes to a third party internally, whether it's economic development, somebody that can work with the homeowner to prevent that foreclosure, right? So it's what I've done is with my recommendations is try to really mix two worlds and connect two dots. Folks focused on blight aren't necessarily thinking about foreclosure prevention, but they're all connected because if you can prevent a foreclosure, you're going to prevent a vacancy. And generally speaking, the homeowners, I'm sure you've dealt with it, that struggle and have struggles. They're not receptive to the banks oftentimes for good reason. And sometimes they need a friendly face, whether it's a municipal employee or it's the HUD agency. There's opportunities that can be done to help the citizens. But that first step, you're utilizing a tool that you already have and just improving it and using it for other purposes as well. And it's
So what would your service look like here in Colerain? You'd have like one point person that would be in charge of Colerain Township, I imagine that.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the website can be set up with multiple users internally, but there would be one admin, and obviously they would control who has access to the data and to the information, and we obviously have to work because the township has done a great job and does a great job with the open data on your website. I've seen that, so there have to be some coordination with that as well. But yeah, that's the idea.
So one thing I noticed in kind of looking at your history are things that were kind of out of the box, and you mentioned that, like Tuscaloosa and Hartford and a couple other things. Does that, do you have, I guess, kind of like a hierarchy that one person that's in charge with Colerain can go to you and a board of advisors and say, look, this seems to be our problem? What kind of out-of-the-box stuff do you suggest?
I am absolutely available to my clients at all times.
Okay.
For full disclosure, which again, that's any relationship has to have open transparency, full disclosure. As I mentioned earlier, we founded in 2019. It's only been 2+ years, so we're still in startup mode. And where I was trained at Safeguard Properties, he was my late father-in-law that founded the company, and he ended up turning a company in the basement with one employee to a huge corporation with over 1,000 employees. He was the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. He trained me. He didn't even graduate high school. Okay, he was a cab driver, the true American success story. He was a medallion. He had a medallion in New York City. He sold it, came to Cleveland, went into the food and produce market. With family, that didn't work out. And next thing you know, he's sitting on his couch till his lawyer said, hey, there's this business that's for sale, and he bought it. He didn't do anything the normal way, and that meant that any of his clients at any time could call him. Even with 1,000 employees, he was CC'd on all the emails, and he was a micromanager, and that's how he built his company, and that's how I was trained. So absolutely, as a sounding board, absolutely.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Halpern.
Thank you.
I guess, are you headed back to Cleveland? I'm going to head back to Cleveland. You have a safe drive, and,
Thank you very much. I believe you have my contact, but I'll leave some business cards.
okay.
Okay, the next presentation, Jeff?
Yes, sir. Mr. Rajagopal, the next item on the agenda is a proclamation for recognizing Blade's Hair Design for many years of service in Colerain Township.
Thank you. This is a proclamation recognizing Blade's hair design for over 25 years of operation. Be it proclaimed by the Township Trustees of Colerain Township that whereas Blade's hair design has been providing first-rate service to the customers since 1995. It's a long time. And whereas the Blade's hair design has become a very popular salon in Colerain Township, as is evidenced by the multitude of returning clients. And whereas Blade's Hair Designs has successfully organized the salon to create a safe, healthy, and sanitized environment for their clients during this pandemic, and whereas we thank Blade's Hair Design for their passion and commitment to serving the community, and to congratulate them on more than 25 years of operation in Colerain Township. Be it proclaimed that the Colerain Township Board of Trustees does hereby recognize February 9, 2021 as Blade's Hair Design Day in Colerain Township. Thank you very much for your great service, and we're proud to have your business in Colerain Township. You see this? You sign
I don't think they
it?
need.
Any? We have motion.
Sure. Move to approve, recommend a motion to approve that proclamation.
Sure.
I'll motion to approve the proclamation.
I second it. Any discussions? That's 25.
Congratulations,
Go
Blade's
ahead.
Hair Design.
Yeah, great service, and we are very proud to have your business in our township.
Rod, your hair looks nice. Do you go there?
Yeah,
I think that's where Matt goes also.
Yeah.
I will
And Jeff
go.
Baker, we don't want to leave him out. They'll starve working on you, Jeff.
Okay, if there's no discussion, Mr. Baker, roll call, please.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal, the next item on the agenda is another proclamation, this one for recognizing Debbie Hurst's service to the township.
We have proclamation recognizing Debbie Hurst for her community service in Colerain Township. Be it proclaimed by the Township Trustees of Colerain Township that whereas we would like to thank Debbie Hurst for her efforts in removing litter from the neighborhoods in Colerain Township, and whereas we would like to thank Debbie for the giving fence at Compton Recycling, providing passerbys with free items to aid residents in the prevention of the spread of COVID-19 virus. And whereas we would like to thank Debbie for her generous donations to several families in Colerain Township during the Christmas holidays. Be it proclaimed that the Colerain Township Board of Trustees does hereby recognize February 10th, right?
Yep.
2021 as Debbie Hurst Day in Colerain Township. We have a motion to approve this proclamation.
I'll motion to approve.
Second it.
Any discussions?
Just thank you to Debbie. In this giving fence also is, this was actually pre-COVID. It's for, it's cold out there, and it's for the folks that don't have the means to often pay for things to keep warm, and that's still up. And if you have stuff, socks and gloves and things like that, you can just donate it there, and then anybody that needs it can pick it up. And the amount of trash that she's picked up has just been incredible. Just an asset to the community, and I thank her so much for her service.
And thank you, Debbie, for your efforts, and not just for that, but for showing others that that anybody can jump in and participate and help out. I think you set a great example.
I would say thank you, Debbie. I seen your work getting involved in our community since I became a trustee. You played integral part in a Groesbeck and also Northbrook community, and you gave out so much food and supplies, moral supports for the community to get together whenever they had the meetings. Also, you helped to give out foods when they have the open house in the Northbrook area. Also, you have a pride in where you live. You personally picking up litters from the streets, from the neighborhoods, and like Matt said, the amount of litter you picked up is so huge, and you have pride the place where you live, and all these efforts you're doing to make our Colerain Township is a better place to live. I sincerely commend you, and we are very proud to make this proclamation on behalf of our township. So, call for the votes, please.
Mr. Unger?
Aye?
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Thank you, Board. The next item is a proclamation declaring the week of February 7th through February 14th, that's this week, to be Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week. And I'd like to invite Assistant Chief Will Mueller to introduce this item. Mr. Mueller?
Thank you, Administrator Mills. Good evening, Board. I'm excited to introduce this next presentation as a proclamation. The topic of this proclamation affects thousands of children and their families around the nation each year. This is a severe medical illness known as congenital heart disease, or what I'll refer to moving forward as CHD. CHD is a leading birth defect in the United States, affecting roughly 1 in every 100 births. In some of the more severe cases of CHD, defects in the heart valve structures that develop while the baby's in utero restrict blood flow through the heart and out to the rest of the body, while other defects in the heart wall structures allow oxygenated and deoxygenated blood to mix, decreasing the body's capacity to deliver oxygen to its cells. These newborn babies often require open heart surgery within the first year of their life to repair the defect, and a great many more will require multiple open heart surgeries throughout their entire life, expanding even into their adult lives. Children and families in Colerain Township are also impacted by CHD. We're not immune. Children discharged home often require highly skilled care involving wound care, oxygen therapy, and in cases where premature birth exists, a trach and home ventilator. It's heartbreaking to see children struggling so early in life to simply breathe and do what is considered to be normal activities. In 2016, hospital costs for CHD exceeded $6 billion. While CHD represents approximately 3.7% of all hospitalizations across the United States at any given time, it represents about 15% of the total cost of those hospital visits and admissions. Fortunately, there's an organization that is taking action to spread awareness and important resources to patients and families struggling with the effects of CHD. This organization is called Conquering CHD. They are a national organization comprised of many state, local chapters who are hard at work doing these great things. To share a little more about this effort, I'd like to introduce Gina Menninger. She's a lead co-coordinator of Conquering CHD Greater Cincinnati's chapter, and one who knows all too well the impacts of CHD. Gina, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. So as he mentioned, my name is Gina, and this is my son, Austin. Austin is now 4 years old. So did you know that the size of a newborn's heart is roughly the size of a walnut? And for our tiniest of CHD patients, such as my son, Austin, that require surgical intervention, surgeons often have to operate on hearts that are no larger than their own thumb. What we thought would be a fun gender reveal appointment for my husband and my twin boys, Max and Luke, turned out to be a parent's worst nightmare. Austin was diagnosed with hypoplastic right heart syndrome, tricuspid and pulmonary atresia, and an ASD at 20 weeks gestation. In non-medical terms, Austin was born without the right side of his heart, the side that pumps the blood to the lungs to be oxygenated before returning to the body. He was born a whopping 9 pounds, 2 ounces at Good Sam Hospital and was taken immediately to Children's Hospital via the MICU unit while I recovered at Good Sam. He had his first open heart surgery, the Norwood, at 6 days old, his second open heart surgery, the Glen, at 4 months old, and on May 29th of 2020, he had his third open heart surgery, the Fontan procedure. For single ventricle kiddos, it is normally a 3 surgery step process, so we would have been done. But what we thought was going to be Austin's last surgery ended up not being. He had other plans. After an echo and a CAT scan and many tests in July and August, it was determined that Austin would have to have his 4th open heart surgery in September of 2020 to revise the Fontan conduit that was placed earlier that year. The surgery appeared to be successful in opening his blood flow to his right lung. We had a post-op echo in November to follow up from surgery, and to our surprise, it showed very little, if any, blood flow to the right lung again. Austin had another heart cath scheduled in December, but because of COVID, had to be postponed until this past January. It was then determined that Austin's main pulmonary artery branch that feeds the lower 2/3 of his right lung had completely just disappeared and was no longer there. So what does this mean for us? This means we will need to continue with a lot of monitoring and more heart catheterizations every 6 to 12 months to make sure that Austin's getting enough oxygen in his blood and out to his body. So although Austin has had many doctor's appointments, tests, and procedures, surgeries, and heart caths and lab draws over the last 4.5 years, he is doing great and continues to be a rock star. He is running around, he wrestles with his brothers, he attends preschool, and is really living the best toddler life. There are more than 1.4 million adults living with congenital heart disease in the U.S., and thanks to greater awareness and improved treatments for congenital heart disease, there are now more adults with congenital heart disease than children. However, there is no cure for CHD. Nearly 1 in every 100 newborns are still born with a heart defect, and it continues to be the most common birth defect in the U.S. and around the world. That's 1 baby every 15 minutes that is diagnosed. This year, 1.35 million new patients will join a worldwide congenital heart disease community. So this week is about raising awareness for congenital heart disease. We hope to be a voice for all CHDers as we unite to give knowledge and support, to be a voice and to spread hope far and wide. Conquering Congenital Heart Disease Ohio celebrates triumphs, honors loved ones lost too soon, recognizes the work still to be done, and continues to fight for research. So thank you, Colerain Township, for helping us to continue being a voice for CHD and giving hope to so many.
Mrs. Miniger, thank you for bringing awareness to this. Austin, you're on TV. Austin, you have any words?
Yeah.
Austin?
You say hi? You keep saying, I have to go potty.
Thank you, Gina. So,
Great,
in support of this effort, and for those impacted by CHD in Colerain, the state of Ohio, and around the nation, Colerain Township would like this week, February 7th through the 14th, to be proclaimed as a Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week. Administrator Mills and Board, I'll turn it back to you for the proclamation.
We have proclamation recognizing congenital, is that congenital? Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week, February 7th to 14th, 2021. Be it proclaimed by the Township Trustees of Colerain Township that whereas the health and well-being of congenital heart patients is of paramount importance, and whereas each year in the United States, more than 40,000 babies are born with congenital heart defect, and whereas the medical community has identified congenital heart defect as the leading cause of birth defect-related deaths, and whereas the medical research can provide more identifiable means of the origins and symptoms of congenital heart defects, and whereas there is no cure for congenital heart defects, and it is lifelong disease requiring ongoing specialized care, and whereas it is crucial that individuals planning a family, fetal clinicians, obstetric physicians, pediatricians, and all those in the medical field have a greater understanding of the potential for congenital heart defects, and whereas Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week provides the opportunity for patients and families affected by this condition to share their experience and knowledge so that general public may be aware of how this defect affects our lives. Be it proclaimed that the Colerain Township Board of Trustees does hereby recognize February 7th through 14th, 2021 as Congenital Heart Defects Awareness Week in Colerain Township. We have a motion to,
I'll motion to approve.
okay, I second it. Any discussions?
Yes, the speaker, we've never met, Gina Menninger.
Right.
How articulate, how much does a mother learn about a child's condition and be able to express it so well, holding the child with her? I'm very impressed with her presentation skill, and it sounds like she has a full career just learning about heart defects and how it's affected her child and other children. I don't know if you can hear us or not, Gina, but you're quite a presenter. And I wish you the best with you and your husband, the best with your son.
Thank you so much.
It's a very heart-touching presentation, you know, and you guys all doing an amazing job. I'm really proud of our Colerain Township Fire Department. Take further steps to support, help our children, our community. That's outstanding service of our department, and I'm very proud of our department being a part of this program to save our children, save the community, and it's very commendable. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you to the fire department. And Austin, I hope you recognize February 14th is that's in that week. So that's Valentine's Day for you and your girlfriend. So you can mac with all the ladies. Thank you, Mrs. Manager. Bye, Austin.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Outstanding service.
Thank you, Board.
Welcome.
Very good.
The
Thank
next-
you, Chief
Mr.
Mueller,
Baker.
Mrs. Manager.
Vote.
We have a roll call, please.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Board, next, I was asked to prepare a letter for your signature to Senators Blessing and Representative Abrams in appreciation of their efforts to secure funding for Megaland. So I wanted to present that letter to you.
You want to read that?
I don't care, sure.
They're identical.
Okay. Mr. Mills has composed a letter to Bill Blessing and to Cindy Abrams. And the letters are identical, so dear Senator Blessing, dear Representative Abrams, we write today in gratitude and appreciation of your efforts on behalf of the residents of Colerain Township to secure Ohio capital budget funds in support of the playground replacement project at Colerain Park. As you are aware, a generation of Colerain Township children made great memories playing on the previous playground at Colerain Park, Megaland. Through an extensive public outreach effort, the township has identified a historic theme for the new playground and has worked with its designer on a concept that draws heavily on Colerain's first settlement, Dunlap Station. The approval of the state's funding for Megaland's replacement means that Phase 2 of the project will be completed immediately. Construction crews will move directly into construction of Phase 2, and both phases will be open for play at the same time, allowing a new generation of Colerain youth to make happy memories in our township parks. Thank you again for your work on behalf of Township residents, and there's room on here for the signatures of the 3 trustees and the fiscal officer. So that is the letter. And so,
We have a motion to approve to,
Yeah,
letter to send?
are you motioning? I'll second then.
Okay, okay. All right, any discussions?
no, I think the letter conveys our message. Thank you for composing it, Mr. Mills.
Thank you. And
Go ahead.
I drive by there like every third day just to see the progress. And it's neat to watch it kind of go up. It's kind of muddy. But I'm really looking forward to the final product.
I really,
Yeah, I'm with you.
I really sincerely thank Cindy Abrahams and Bill Blessings for supporting our township and make this megaland to be built. And you guys did a fantastic job in getting this money for about $500,000, right?
Approximately, 490, yep.
Approximately $500,000. That's a lot of money to build a beautiful park in our township. Thank you for all the support you guys give. Okay. So, Mr. Baker, roll call.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye,
Mr. Waller.
All right.
thank you. So next on the agenda is citizens address.
Sorry, Mr. Rajagopal, there's one more letter that was
Oh.
asked to prepare.
Okay.
I was asked to prepare a letter on behalf.
Oh, Moose Lodge, I'm
yes,
sorry.
On behalf of the board to Moose Lodge in appreciation for their community service that's provided by their members.
Matt Reed.
Thank you. Dear Mr. Nelson, we write today in gratitude and appreciation of the hard work and dedication of Moose Lodge members and their ongoing commitment to community service. Your recent efforts to pick up litter, trash, and debris throughout the Groesbeck neighborhood made a real difference ahead of the dedication of the memorial to Dale Woods in front of the Duke Operations Facility. We understand that the mission of Moose Lodge number 2 is to be a strong community partner by supporting many initiatives to help others in need. Your members are dedicated to various causes, and the lodge serves as a collective unit to bring these efforts to life. We see that you put your values into action in Colerain Township and value your contributions to the township. Thank you again for your service to the township. Sincerely yours. And again, the 3 trustees and fiscal officer have opportunity to sign.
I would motion that we approve that letter to the Moose Lodge.
I'll second it. Any discussions?
Thank you for their efforts.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Moose Lodge, for being a part of our community and helping our community, and it makes a lot of difference, making pride what you do. Thank you.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye,
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
okay. The next on the agenda is a citizenship draft. Is anyone outside? No?
No, the state's level is red, so there's no in-person comment today.
Okay. I have a letter from resident, Ms. Kathy Moore, and also I have a letter from Linda Goggle, and also practically came through the email. The Lisa Carpenter Knapp also, what's her name on that? Also part of that letter also? I think that's the money she's quoting. Oh, forwarding, okay. All right, it's a pretty lengthy letters, email. Both letters, emails concern about the audit reports from the state auditor about the Colerain Township. I'm going to pick up some of the concerns, and Mr. Mills, you respond to that?
Sure,
Okay.
happy to.
She's mostly the amount of transfers was not transferable, and also when the one fund to other fund money was transferred, there was no resolution was made. And also I'll read this is more important, to effectively control the budgetary cycle and to maintain accountability over receipts. The township should post to the ledger on a timely basis. It appears to me that the finance office is mainly working from the transparency budget book and leaving the real accounting on the Uniform Accounting Network system, which is called UAN, to whenever they get around to it. Could that be reason for no financial reports posted since August? Somebody needs some training. I can bet there is no other township in comparison to Colerain that does not have the report posted within a week after the end of the month. You have a problem. And also she went on to talk about the former administrator when he time to retire, the final days of working, he was given the car allowance, and these things they will address. Also, she talks about it's both people not selecting in the committees, and especially Stephanie Wright applied for the CIC. She was not considered also. So pretty much the other person also, Linda Goggle, talks about how the state audit report come out on the Colerain Township's auditing. So would you respond to it, please?
I think we should read these letters in full.
You want to read it full?
I mean, I'd be happy to. I just think they need to be read into the
I agree.
record.
All right, go ahead. You want to go read it?
I can pick one, or you can read one. It doesn't
Sure,
matter which
sure,
one you want
sure.
me to read.
You can read Kathy's.
Okay, then Matt or you can read Linda's.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and read, this letter is from Kathy Moore, and it was sent to Rajagopal and Matt Wallert, and it was not sent to me in an email. So two of the trustees have already seen it. This is the first time I've seen it. Regarding the recent audit for 2018-2019, has the board read the audit, read the management letter, read the township's response? Many of the issues in the audit have been brought to your attention in the past. Will you admit you have no idea what is going on? Will you admit that each time you vote yes on something, it is not because you are informed about the subject, but you agree with Mr. Mills? Something that bothers me very much, and you should be aware, is when there have been change orders to a project and the board was not asked to approve the additional amount, period. You agreed on the initial amount, but Mr. Mills took it upon himself to pay more. In 3 years, I don't ever recall him bringing this to the board's attention. That is what you are supposed to do. A lot of non-compliance financial transactions happened during this period. A lot, 10 plus, of material weaknesses. There appears to be a lot of deficiencies in the township's internal controls. I hope the board is willing to discuss these issues in public and tell residents what they are doing to improve these internal controls. From the report, the township did not have procedures in place for effective monitoring of financial reporting. And then in all caps it says, it is important that the trustees take an active role in monitoring the posting and reporting of such activity. Failure to accurately post and monitor financial activity increases the risk that errors, theft, and fraud could occur and not be detected in a timely manner. I can't wait to see that. Has the board ever seen a financial report, a cash journal, appropriations ledger? It also recommends officials read the Auditor of State Ohio Township Handbook. To effectively control the budgetary cycle and to maintain accountability over receipts, the township should post to the ledger on a timely basis. It appears to me that the finance office is mainly working from their, quote, transparency budget book and leaving the real accounting on the Uniform Accounting Network system to whenever they get around to it. Could that be the reason for no financial reports posted since August? Somebody needs some training. I can bet there is no other township in comparison to Colerain that doesn't have their report posted within a week after the end of the month. You have a problem. A former administrator received a car allowance after his final day of working. This is something the board should be watching. He was overpaid, and if the board would review the payments for employees separating, they could see these things. But you choose to be hands-off and leave everything to Mr. Mills. By doing so, you leave yourself with one of the worst audits in the history of Colerain. It's the board's responsibility to appoint committee members, yet the board was not given the applications for zoning boards to make a choice. Instead, Mr. Mills takes it upon himself to appoint to the committees. The one person who applied and didn't get appointed to any position was Stephanie Wright. The same thing happened with the CIC members. That's your job. You are Mr. Mills's boss. So a year later, you have no members on the CIC except employees that don't even live in the township. What happened to residents getting involved? I guess that only happens if Mr. Mills wants it that way. Then this. You have Mr. Unger call Mr. Mills and ask permission to call the insurance agent. That in itself proves you don't know what your job is. I know the auditor grades communities on their handling of public records. Nowhere could I find that grade. Can a board member tell me the grade the township received? If not, Mr. Mills. And that was all on one page. It's got a 1 on the bottom of it. I guess there was not a second page to this.
No, that's it.
Okay, so that's the letter from Kathy Moore. And Matt, I didn't know if you wanted to read the one from Mrs. Goggle.
Sure.
Linda.
You want me to?
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead, sir.
From Linda Goggle. Good evening, Board. I recently viewed a copy of the State Auditor's findings for the 2018 and 2019 financials of Colerain Township. The audit was posted on Facebook. I'm concerned with the number of findings that the audit noted. Too many to list them all in this email. I became more concerned after reading a comment that was left on the post. I would like the Board to be aware of the posted comment. Lisa Carpenter Knapp. As a person who has reviewed hundreds of Township's audits, that looks really shady. It's not just a few errors, but a complete disaster. I would request a copy of the management letter. I assume it would have the details about the other misstatements, but if not, I'd like to get a copy of that as well. I would also like to make sure that trustees discuss the audit at their meeting along with what they're going to do about these findings, including additional investigations and research. They can't just let something like this go because it could be indicative of a deeper problem. Under Yost, the auditor's office became practically useless, and in my opinion, it's likely that many fiscal officers have figured out all the loopholes. Gone are the days of townships having a healthy fear of the auditor's office. Under Yost, to save money, the majority of audits are now done by independent third-party accountants who are then reviewed on their performance by the fiscal officer, him or herself. So if they ask too many questions or make too many negative comments, they may never work for the auditor's office again. Talk about the fox guarding the hen house. So as a concerned resident, I'm asking, will the board be discussing the audit? What steps will the board do about the findings? Will it be investigated and researched? Will someone be held accountable? What can be done to keep from this happening again? As a quote from Mrs. Knapp, they can't just let something like this go because it could be indicative of a deeper problem. Ms. Knapp is a former trustee of Orange Township, Ohio. Thank you for your time and look forward to your response. Sincerely, Linda Gall.
Sure, would you like me to respond?
Those were the only two that we had.
That's right. Okay, so there weren't too many findings to list. I can list them very succinctly. There were 3 findings in the audit report, which is available on the Auditor of State's website. And those 3 findings, the first one was related to the incorrect classification of revenues. We have been classifying receipts money that we receive into the township in a certain way for time immemorial. We have established pay-in sheets that identify where revenues go into our budget. The auditor, though they have audited this many times in the past, has created a finding 2019-1, to tell us to change how we account for certain revenues coming in. So for example, in one instance, we categorized a receipt as charges for service we should have categorized a receipt as charges for service when we actually categorized it or classified it as license, permits, and fees receipt. In another instance, other financial receipts was the classification that was incorrectly classified as miscellaneous receipts. So instead of other financial receipts, it should have been miscellaneous receipts. Another one, we classified something as taxes receipts when it should have been intergovernmental receipts. So they go on through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different ways that we had been classifying receipts and have told us that we need to do it a different way, and we absolutely will do that. I guess our frustration internally is, why is it an issue this year when it hasn't been an issue for the past 5 audits that they've done?
There's no money missing or unaccounted for, it's just accounted for with a different coding.
Right. Instead of other financial receipts, it should have been miscellaneous receipts. So, okay, thank you. We always want to improve our performance, and this will certainly help us do that. That's the first finding of 3. The second finding is related to, at the end of 2019, we had more revenues than we expected. Each year, we have to send something to the county, which is called a Certificate of Estimated Resources, and we send that to the County Budget Commission. At the end of 2019, the amount of revenue that the township had taken in was higher than the amount of revenue that was listed on our Certificate of Estimated Resources. And
Estimated.
it's called estimated resources, right?
So we estimated and we got a little more than we estimated.
That's correct. And so we received in more money than we estimated in our Certificate of Estimated Resources. That was finding 2019-2. That's the second of 3 findings in our audit report. The third finding was related to the overpayment of former administrator Dan Malloy. As part of Dan Malloy's contract with Colerain Township, he was to receive $500 per month for a car stipend, and that was incorrectly set up by our payroll person at the time as a biweekly payment. As we learned at the end of last year, biweekly payments have some quirks, and there are approximately twice a year, 2 months out of the year, there are 3 pay periods in a month because you pay them biweekly. So over the course of 2 years that Dan Malloy was the administrator, that occurred 3 times. And so what that means is, instead of getting paid $250 on pay period 1 of the month and $250 on pay period 2 of the month, well, then there was that pay period 3 of that month that he was receiving the $250. Over the course of his tenure, that amounted to $750 that he was overpaid. When we learned about this through the audit, we reached out to Mr. Malloy and shared with him the mistake that was made at the time by whomever it was that was working on payroll at the time. In a true testament to the integrity of Mr. Malloy, he came up to the office and paid that $750. And you'll see in the audit report that on December 22nd, 2020, Dan Malloy paid $750. It was receipted into the Colerain Township's general fund. This finding is considered to be paid in full. So those were the 3 findings in our audit report, and yep, we are continuously improving, and that's how we intend to handle this.
So just to sum up the 3, first off, how did you put Mr. Malloy's money as miscellaneous or other?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that off the top of my head.
The auditor changes hands from time to time. They told us to do it a different way, and we're going to do it a different way,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes.
The certificate of budget resources, the estimated certificate of budget resources, I think that we use the best tools available to estimate that. I don't know that that's coming in over. I don't know how you handle that. And we've already, Mr. Malloy's already returned the funds. So each one of these, there's 3 findings, except within the one, the classify receipts is a number of others. But we've addressed this each one individually.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I just want to assure, you're good. Our residents, our Colerain Township residents, I talked to many times about this to Mr. Mills and also Jeff Beckbach. There is no fraudulent transaction at all. There is no fraudulent. There is no wrong giving, no, not even a wrong transfers. This matter of, just like Mr. Mills mentioned about it, a transfer of funds, but there is no fraudulent. I want to assure our residents, all these years, all this audit, they never say we did any fraud. Whatever they make the people complain about this, which is the auditor finds it some the procedural, but there's no fraud or anything in wrongdoings in transferring our monies. Okay, I want to assure this to our residents. I want to read this in our findings. This, our response, you can find it in our township webpage.
Is our response on there?
Yes.
Our response is here. You can look at our town page, all the response to the auditor's findings. But I want to do the final things we put. Colerain Township staff and elected officials are dedicated to maintaining the highest level of efficiency, accountability, and transparency to both our internal, external customers. We take pride in upholding the township highest standards while always trying to provide value to our customers. Who are the customers? Our residents, taxpayers, you people. Highest value, provide highest value to our customers. Improvements where applicable have been put in place in order to better our operational efficiency based off the auditor's findings. Every day we make mistakes in things. We always make ourselves, how are we going to better ourselves the next day? This is what we're going to do. And again, the findings, audit tells you how we transfer the monies. Okay? Thank you for explaining this. And I want to thank these two, Kathy and other people.
I have one other comment about that, Jeff. When we discussed this earlier, it seems that the Ohio Revised Code is pretty specific and tells us how to do this. And that's the way we were doing it, yet the Attorney General has an opinion that's in conflict, has a 30-year-old opinion that's in conflict with what is currently in the Ohio Revised Code. Am I somewhere on base with that?
Yes, so what the three findings that I was referring to were the findings of the audit. In addition to the findings of an audit, the auditor provides a management letter. And the management letter is like a second tier of recommendations or things that they propose that we do differently. There were several, and we can get into the management letter also, but I think that you're referring to a finding in the management letter.
Right.
And so I'm happy to do that. Would you like me to go into, there are four findings in the management.
Well, just we discussed that the Ohio Revised Code says one thing and the Attorney General says something else. We have two competing ideas from two different state agencies.
That's right. So there's the audit, and then there's the management letter. In the management letter, there were 4 non-compliance findings, which is not an audit finding. It's a non-compliance finding in a management letter. The first one was related to the land use committee that the board established. The Board of Trustees established the land use committee to advise the township administration and planning director with respect to a new land use plan. We were then sued. This was something that the board wanted. They wanted to get more input from residents. As soon as these boards were set up, we were sued by one of the authors by Ms. Moore and Ms. Wright, for example. We have fought in common pleas court and will likely continue to fight in Court of Appeals that these boards did nothing wrong. For some reason, the auditor, because by the very virtue that these lawsuits were presented to a court, they have decided that they needed to include that in this management letter. The Land Use Committee, by the way, was dissolved in June of 2020, and the FAC, the Financial Advisory Committee, was dissolved in January, or rather will be considered tonight. The second noncompliance finding in the management letter was related to general fund transfers. So they said, the auditor said, hey, Colerain Township, whenever you transfer money from the general fund to another fund, which the board just did last month, you need to do it by resolution, which the board did last month. But a year ago, we did not do it by resolution. It was done a different way. And that's because in the Ohio Revised Code, it says very specifically that when funds are transferred from one fund to another, it must be done by resolution, except if it's from the general fund. When we pointed that out to the auditor, they disagreed, and as Dan mentioned, pointed to an Attorney General opinion that was from a very long time ago. When we reached out to the Attorney General for a new opinion, they said they could not provide that to us because they represented the auditor's office. So it's sort of a catch.
Regardless, there's no money missing either way. It's
No.
just that we did things according to the Ohio Revised Code, and the Attorney General has their 20 to 30-year-old opinion on something else.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Go on.
Okay. In the management letter, noncompliance finding 3 talks about how we booked debt service payments. So in the Colerain Town Center TIF, we sold bonds and used that money to build a road, Generation Way. And the way that works is, because it's in a TIF district, the Hamilton County Auditor collects the taxes from the owner of the property, and instead of giving that to us, they give it to our trustee, not township trustee like is elected, but a bank that serves as a trustee for and stewards these funds. So that money never comes to Colerain Township. It goes straight to our bank, and then our bank executes this, it's called a waterfall, and it says this person gets paid, this person gets paid, this person gets paid according to the rules that you guys established in the TIF district. So what finding 3 points to is they wanted us to book that revenue, even though it never came into the township and went back out. They wanted us to account for the fact that our trustee had received those funds and had paid them out. So there should be an in and an out, and we will certainly do that. And then the final noncompliance finding in our management letter was related to a sign-out form for our P card. Okay, so currently, or before this, if you needed to make a purchase using a P card, or
Purchasing card.
purchasing card or a credit card, think of it as a credit card, you would go in, sign out the credit card, take it to your workstation, make the purchase. Before this, of course, you would have a PO open, but you would make the purchase, take it back to the safe, sign it back in, and that was how we knew where the P card was, right? And so as soon as that form was filled out, we looked at our records retention policy, and we determined that as soon as it had no administrative value, we could throw it away, because the purpose of the document was to tell us where that P card was at any given moment. When all the lines were filled up, it's fine, we threw it away, because we had other mechanisms for tracking how.
Such as a bill that detailed each expenditure.
An invoice and then a bill that we get. So the auditor has said that we need to retain that sign-out sheet. We cannot destroy that sign-out sheet, and so we will. And that's even though it has no administrative value to us anymore, we will retain that and have it available for the auditor at his next audit. So that takes us through the management letter.
Thank you.
Right,
Thank
and
you,
a
Tim.
lot of these comments in the letter that I read questions whether any of us have seen this or discussed this. And as I remind people that watch these meetings, the 3 of us don't talk outside of these meetings. I can't talk to Raj, I can't talk to Matt outside of these meetings. And this letter almost sounds like it criticizes us, like we don't know what's going on, when we do, because I can talk to you anytime I want. But the fact of the matter is, this letter is exactly right. We don't talk to each other outside of meetings. That's why we have discussions here. And so don't misinterpret what the writer is saying. And to that end, this writer just sends these emails to 2 of the 3 trustees, so I wouldn't know what was coming in this letter anyway, and that's not the first, second, or third time, which is fine. I just as soon find out about stuff when it's presented to me on the night of a meeting, but this writer only communicates with 2 of the 3 trustees, which is obvious in writing here by this letter that I've seen for the first time this evening. So thank you for your time in describing all that and going through that, Jeff. Sure. So we've had the discussion here in public.
Yes.
Matt, you got any comments?
Nope.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for explaining, Jeff.
There's
You
just
got
one other thing that I found that was inaccurate. The change orders, you guys, that was on a trustee agenda. So, I mean, it was published and it's, and further, you've delegated the authority to enter into contracts of value less than $10,000 or less. That change order was less than $10,000 and it was on a publicly published document, which was the agenda, and then it was voted on by the Board of Trustees. So,
And to be fair, our $10,000 leash is much tighter than many of your colleagues.
much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where they are in other townships, but they're not 10. I mean,
Right.
And that said, if we're in the middle of a big project, we don't want to make that vendor wait, stop the project for 3 weeks till the next trustee meeting, or 2 weeks or whatever. So that's why we've delegated to you the ability to enter into contracts under $10,000. And you're right, it was in the agenda and it's public, and
Yes.
I don't know anybody that has more information out there than us. They talk about other townships. Show me the township that has as much information out there that's available than we do, so.
And the final question in Ms. Moore's email was related to what our transparency rating was. And our transparency rating was surprising. It was rated non-compliant. And that's interesting to me because it uses our public records process and infrastructure for the township and for the CIC is 100% the same. It all goes to the same place and funnels through the same people. Our CIC received the highest possible score for transparency. The township received no stars and a non-compliant rating. And when I spoke to our auditor about why that would be, they said it was because we were sued over the land use committee. That's what I was told. And so, extraordinarily frustrating for me because it demonstrates that that rating system has some flaws, in my opinion, when one organization that uses the exact same people and processes as another organization, one gets the highest and one gets nothing. But the answer to Ms. Moore's question succinctly is non-compliant.
Thank you.
And that said, I never heard any reports from the land use committee or anything. That never came to the board ever. So,
Right.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next on the agenda. Administrative reports.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Rajagopal. Mr. Weckbach, would you please queue up the administrative reports? Thank you, sir. And we will start our administrative reports with the fire department and Chief Walls.
evening, Chief.
Good evening to the board, those watching virtually, as well as everyone else here in attendance, including the fiscal officer, administrator, and legal. And so I got a brief administrative report, starting with our EMS, or our activity for the month of January. So in the month of January, we made 739 emergency medical services incident responses. We had 140 fire incident responses. We made 31 responses into the Springfield Township EMS contract area. We had a reported fire loss of $3,000 for the month, but we saved $115,230. Our average response time for the arrival of the first unit on the scene was 5 minutes and 23 seconds, and our first unit on the scene less than 6 minutes was 69.18%. Lastly then, we're currently in the process of conducting a strategic planning process, and so typically then, 3 goals that we have in mind here. 1, clarity, direction, and focus. We'll do that with a vision, mission, values, and the plan itself. Secondly is to drive organizational alignment, and we'll do that by aligning our resources, all of them, to maximize our strategic success. And then lastly, serving as a conduit to communicate our message, and that being what we must do to create short-term and long-term sustainability for the fire department. And so we have a timeline of about 6 months, the end of June, actually, to get that completed. It's a part of a strategic initiative for this year, and so we look forward to having participation from internal and external stakeholders and providing Administrator Mills a completed report by the end of June. And that's my report.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. The next administrative report will be provided by Chief Mark Denny in the Police Department.
Good evening, Board. How are you? For the month of January, our officers responded to 3,516 calls for service. They conducted 200 traffic stops, and in those traffic stops made 10 arrests for DUI or OVI. The response time to emergency calls, having the first police car on scene, was 3 minutes and 51 seconds. So that's a new measure we're going to do from now on. We typically, prior to this month, had done all calls for service. I've now found a way to narrow that down to emergency calls for service, which I think is a more important number. So I'll be reporting that as we move forward. In January, we had our our online accreditation visit from the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, and we were awarded our continued accreditation from that agency, and they'll be on site in August here in Colerain to do our final of the 4-year accreditation cycle. So we were very happy to see that go through well, and a lot of hard work by our people, and they did a nice job. So then that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Chief. A quick question on this new kind of use of amount of time for emergency calls. Is any call to 911 an emergency call, even though it may technically not be an emergency, or do you code those based upon the type of call?
Unfortunately, this stat is a little labor intensive, so I go through each call in blocks to make sure that they're actually emergencies. And some people unfortunately do misuse that system, and I don't want to have that muddy the water. So I do look at calls that are either crimes in progress, violent assaults, things of that nature. Alarms are counted in that as well. So anything that's a true emergency is counted, but it's not simply just based on the call.
So I guess my next question is, and this may be kind of a basic question, but the social scientist in me wants to know. So do you have kind of a code book for the next person so that we could use that longitudinally over time? And you say, look, these get coded this way, these get coded that way?
Yes, and I'm working with all three of the commanders to make sure they're understanding how we're doing that. So we're doing apples to apples moving forward years down the line. I think it's a good point. It needs to be an applicable measure as we move forward.
Awesome. I appreciate that, and thanks for all your hard work and for the men and women of our police force too.
Thank you, sir.
Chief, go ahead. Chief, this response time is amazing, and a couple of incidents happened lately. I think it's last week. Because of the quick response of our police officer to the scene and apprehension of the suspect, it's amazing work. And I seen one incident where there was a pedestrian got hit. The way the police officer handled this situation, blocking the road, protecting the scene, and try to give our fire department, try to give that, revive that, that the victim. It's all a very coordinated effort, Chief, and our police officer did a great job responding, apprehending that suspect of that incident. Thank you.
Yeah, that was the shooting over the weekend, and we were able to quickly get to the area where we located the suspect, and they were in custody as the victim was being treated. So it was a great job on their part. Thank you for recognizing that.
Thank you, Chief. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Rajagopal. The next administrative report will be provided by Ms. Jackie O'Connell with our Public Services Department. Ms. O'Connell?
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
You can see I've got just a couple things tonight. Our requests for service were down this month. The park visitorship was up over last year, as you can see. So people are still getting out and using their parks, and hopefully the snowy weather doesn't deter them. They're going out there and having fun and still trying to meet their New Year's resolutions. They don't give up on those. So speaking of snow, we have had a lot of it lately. So not just today, which I think they said, I heard on channels, was the largest snowstorm in 13 years. In the month of January, we had 6 call-outs, and we've already had 4 call-outs this month already. So the guys were working hard last night. They worked all through the night to get cleared, and then did some more work on it during the day. But I want to give a big thanks to just a couple groups. One, everybody who moved their cars off the street. That is tremendously helpful for us. It helps speed up snow removal. and it's safer for us too. So thank you to everybody who cooperated and moved your cars off the street for us last night, and also to the number of residents that reached out. So a lot of times in public services and then all the departments, we hear, we get calls when things are wrong, when there's potholes, when things aren't draining right, when something else is going wrong. And today my inbox was flooded. I received phone calls from residents, longtime residents, that were just so appreciative of the job that the crews did last night. So I just want everybody to know how much that means to everybody here, because we don't hear that a lot, and it's a thankless job rolling in the snow for 8, 10, 12 hours trying to keep up with Mother Nature. So thank you for everybody who reached out to let us know. Also, Farmers to Families was this week. So it was a little different event for us. It was cold, so we were trying to stay warm. And it seemed to be going really slow. We were told we had 1,000 units, and normally we had anywhere from 1,100 to 1,200. So we were told we had 1,000 units, and we just couldn't seem to, the crowd was much slower. So we were a little concerned by that. We thought maybe the weather kept people out, but we did give out all of our units by the end of the day. Well, it turns out that the warehouse sent us more than we thought. So we thought we were giving out 1,000 units. We actually gave out 1,300 units yesterday, which is the most that we have given out here at our site. So the next one is March 8th. It's also a Monday, so mark your calendars. The boxes have been containing a gallon of milk, protein, fresh produce, and dairy. And this week, the protein was shredded chicken, Polish sausage. There's also yogurt, potatoes, onions, and apples in the box with a gallon of milk too. So it's a great box. Thanks to all the volunteers who came out. We had some Colerain volunteers come out. We had some other groups and other people associated with April with Catholic Charities of Southwest Ohio, which is just an amazing group to work with. So March 8th, if you can volunteer, please do so. If you need a box, please come here, pick up a box for your neighbor, pick up a box for your family who can't make it. And lastly, our litter laborer started this week. So we hired 2 last month, and one of them unfortunately quit before he even started, but we had one of ours, we did have one start this week. He's worked 20 hours. It's a little difficult this week since we had so much snow, but he worked on getting snipe signs down. So he was actively collecting and tracking the snipe signs he got down, which are the random signs that people put up on telephone poles. So we also had a meeting to work on coordinating litter collection efforts and working with, got a plan together on ODOT, probation, CCA, community volunteers, the litter laborers, the police officer who's going to assist with litter, the county. So we've got a plan going forward to try to fill in some holes, but it's a learning process, and a little deterred by the snow, but it's not going to stop us.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connell. A couple just responses. When I came in, I talked to Mr. Baker about the roads were incredible in Colerain Township this morning. I mean, they really, compared to the rest of Hamilton County, it was amazing. And it actually was a topic of discussion among people here in the building. They're like, wow, this stuff was really clear. And they did a fantastic job under some really, really difficult circumstances. And I'm just very, very thankful for the job. I mean, I can't oversell it, because you know what the streets look like in, up on Seton and Gilsey and places like that, because your son goes up there and it's still a mess up there. And I just thank you so much for the Farmers to Families. That's fantastic. Just I'm so happy that we're involved with that. And I'll just end by saying you had me at snipe signs, so thank you very much.
Good, glad to hear it. Thank you for recognizing staff. That's much appreciated, Mr. Wallert.
Thank you. Jackie, I totally agree with Matt. Our guys did an incredible job cleaning up the snow, keeping the street very safe. Fantastic job. Like he said, better than the county did. The county roads. Our roads are incredibly, cleaned up, very safe. And also, you did a fantastic job in doing that, the Farmers to Families thing. This is a 3rd program you did, and it's amazing to see the people coming when they give the box to them, how thankful they are. Can I have one more to my sister or something like that? It's a great program, and you make Colerain Township proud. You made Colerain Township proud. We got a lot of volunteers, incredible people. We also have a Colerain resident, our own resident, Stephanie, right, came and helped us. So a lot of people, now this program is fired up. So I'm looking forward for the, March and April. And also their volunteers, it's really praising Colerain Township for hosting this. You know, it's something that we do, good thing for our community. Thank you so much. Well organized.
Yes, you're welcome. And I would be remiss if I did not recognize the police department and Lieutenant Phillips
yes,
and all of
yes.
the officers who helped out on Monday with the food distribution. Their logistics and traffic flow, it made the event seamless. People could come in and get a box of food within 2 minutes. So it was really great. But also volunteer, if there are any Colerain residents, groups that would like to volunteer, it's really a great effort for us, or opportunity for us to give back to our neighbors. So please reach out.
Good. Like I said, the police department did a great job of traffic flow and setting up that cones and everything, and very protection, safety. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Ms. O'Connell. Our next administrative report will be given by Mr. Mike Iona from the Planning Department.
Thank you, Mr. Mills, and good evening, board members. This month was a big month for permits. We had 27 permits in January. You can tell that 2021 is one of the bigger years since we've been keeping records. As far as Board of Zoning Appeals and Zoning Commission applications, these are our development applications. We had 3 this month. Those were all Zoning Commission applications. And one of those is a larger subdivision that will be heard at the Zoning Commission next Tuesday and will come before you at the March meeting. As far as violation volume, you can see we're starting 2021 off as another banner year with 222 permits. A lot of those are property maintenance violations, as well as you all know, trash and junk, as well as debris is one of our big issues here in Colerain Township. In fact, we already have a nuisance abatement resolution for your consideration this evening, where we have a handful of our frequent flyers that we look forward to sending a message to earlier this year about trash and junk. As far as abatements, we don't have any abatements in the works yet this year, but we're hoping to change that. Housing court, it's kind of been hit or miss this year. We're down, and that's largely due to the pandemic. We do have all the paperwork filed for the backlog that we have, and we're diligently working with our legal counsel to get those cases into court. We are also looking forward to the opportunity to maybe do an extra process with some of those cases that have gone to legal. They've been through the process. We've revamped our communications to do one more kind of final notice touch, if you will, because we actually have achieved some compliance with some of our more stubborn cases over the past year by doing that final notice and some of the extra diligent efforts that we've been doing. So that's all I have for you this evening.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Iona. For my part this evening, board, there were 2 things that I wanted to bring up. First, I wanted to jump on the bandwagon of saying how grateful I am for our public services department and the work that they do. I mean, this time of year, we spend a lot of time remembering rightfully that our police and fire personnel make a huge difference in the lives of Colerain Township residents. But this time of year, I think it's very clear to all of us how important our public services guys are. And I want to share with you that these guys take this stuff very seriously. I was up talking to the crew when they got in this afternoon. This is after being out all night last night. They got home for just a few hours of sleep, and then we're right back on the road to make sure that everything was safe and clear for our residents. And with smiles on their face, they were recounting all the sewer grates that would pop their blades and wake them up, and they take this very seriously. They have a good time with it, and I am so appreciative of the work that they do. Thank you all for recognizing that as well. Second thing I wanted to bring up, we are It is February, and we are very much in full gear as it relates to executing your strategic plan and budget for 2021. The big theme that you all identified as your vision for what you wanted us to focus on this year was to make Colerain Township prosperous, green, and clean. I just wanted to remind the audience that's listening that the way that we do that is by setting goals, and we have 6. That's right. Yep, you got yours in your head too. Good. That's what I'm talking about. This isn't more than like 10 feet away from me ever, except for maybe on the weekend. There are 6 strategic goals in this 2021 strategic plan. The first 3 are aimed directly at that big theme: clean, green, and prosperous. The first goal is to increase a focus on economic development and township prosperity. The second is to engage the new economy with green initiatives, and the third is to improve the look of the township with a focus on litter and dumping. The second 3 strategic goals for this year are more focused on continuous improvement and sort of maybe more back of the house operations, managing the township's finances responsibly while improving financial policies and processes. Goal 5 is to continue to provide high quality safety services, and goal 6 is to continuously improve the operations of the township. What I want to make clear is that these are not hollow goals. With each of these goals, there are initiatives or things that we are going to do that are owned by the different departments. And in the strategic plan, for each goal, we list out all of the initiatives and what department is working on those. I wanted to report to you this evening that the first half of the year, we usually break up initiatives into first half initiatives and second half initiatives. We are fully underway with our first half initiatives, and we are making great progress. So looking forward to reporting more on that as the year goes on, but just wanted to point out that it's all full steam ahead.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Sorry, you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. I'm spitballing here. I haven't even asked you about this, but this weekend I was up in Grove City, and once you become an elected official or a trustee, you look at things a lot differently. And I'm looking at some of the signs that they have for Grove City and things like that. And one thing that hit me is you enter on at exit 100, I forget the name of the road there. Yes. They have the Welcome to Grove City, and then underneath it they have a big thing that says to sign up for our newsletter, hit www.grovecity.whatever.
Yep.
And it occurred to me that, and all of us get the Colerain reminders every day, and it's a great source of information. But I don't know who's out there that doesn't know about that, and that maybe there's another way to reach out. I mean, it's kind of a oddity to say, sign up for this on the internet when people may not know. And I just thought, I wonder if there's something similar to that we can do with because the information that we get out about what's going on in the community is fantastic. And I don't know if there's a way that people could opt in and get it by text, or if there's another way that wouldn't require, hours and hours of work kind of deal.
Yep, that's
So
a great
just throwing
idea.
that to you for, I don't know, I Grove City, I just seem to, I like the way they do things up there sometimes.
That's a great point. We'll look into that.
And if it's too expensive, it's too expensive, but we'll see if it's something that can fly.
Sure.
Thank you. And thank you for all the hard work on the comprehensive plan. I'm excited to see the snow go so that we can start working in earnest.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Jeff. Any further comments?
No.
Okay. Then let's move on to the trustees reports. Who want to go first? Anyone? Matt, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll keep it real short. I've had probably 20 or 30 calls in the last 2 weeks about continued people with identity theft, and it continues to be a problem. And my first response is always to talk to your local law enforcement. You have to file a report. I don't think that Chief Denny's going to go, to Nigeria and arrest these people, but you need that to show a paper trail. And he's been very helpful, I think, for people that have contacted him. I mentioned Farm to Families. I mentioned the roads. Monday, Northwest Schools had their vaccine day, and I'm so happy to see that there was a little bit of back and forth. I know that the superintendent called a couple weeks ago to make sure Northwest was on the list, and that everybody got vaccinated, the teachers, so that we could take care of our students as well. And just stay safe out there, and just proud to represent a community like Colerain. It's, I'm very optimistic about the way things are going, and I thank everybody for their support. And for those of you that had issues with me, contact me. We'll try to sort them out. Thanks.
Thanks, Raj. And yes, we all get phone calls, and those of us in the community, I think we all three now have our cell phone numbers posted, and I think we're all getting plenty of calls, it sounds like. I do too, and I want people to know our code enforcement, even though the weather's been a little cold and a little bit of snow yesterday and probably coming up tomorrow night, our code enforcement is out there, and they're very responsive. And I got a call from somebody, just as an example, a couple nights ago over on a street off Pippin Road, and part of that call was this guy has several cars that have been in his front yard for a while, and our police department handled that, so I'd like to thank Chief Denny, and we are on it. This stuff goes into our system, it gets handled. Our enforcement officers go out and look at it. It gets written up. It's just an ongoing process. But I think we're setting the tone that, we don't put up with the stuff that might have been tolerated years ago. And I think in the last 3 years, we've made great progress. On a related topic, I'm glad that the trustees got together late last year and came up with a litter pickup program. And it sounds like our one employee's off to a good start. And it'll be great when we get the second employee on board, and I think it's going to make a real difference. And once again, 404-3057, if you have a question or something that I can help you with, please feel free to give me a call. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. It's a nice report. I want to, all the trustees, and following the 2021 strategic plan and planning. This main thing is the beautification, Colerain. We have, I met with lots of groups of people, they're stakeholders in Colerain Township. They do a great job on picking up the litters, but we have a pocket of people everywhere that somehow I try to connect them, they can talk to each other. So then we got lots of resource coming now. We hired the 2 people, we got our enforcement people. Then I talked with the Metro, the president, and he's trying to give, the building that benches, also, the Colerain Avenue, the bus stops, keep it neat, clean. And he promised me to get some matching grants for the cleanup. So we have all the stakeholders here, Audit, and the community group like CCA, you got a Northbrook people from the Groesbeck, Matt also picking up with the Groesbeck, the community people, the leaders like this. So I'm thinking, let's all communicate, let's be in one point. Now the Chamber of Commerce may join too, on this, and the planning. So the things are really working out, and we are excited. Like Dan said, Matt just said, we are excited. We're moving forward in the direction we planned, the strategic plan. That's very important. Previously, we don't like any, now we all follow the strategic plan. We got 2020, we got the sidewalks, was number 1 goal. We are building a lot of sidewalks. So the beautification leaders are combining the groups of people, let them talk to each other. I talked with your leaders, and say things, we'll work out how we're going to plan this. Let them connect to each other. I'm so proud to say. And also, this plan, we established a Colerain Avenue corridor study. We talked about this, it's about $53 million. But we are going to make this happen. I'm on meeting with Steve Shabbat and ODOT directors, both directors, director of planning and director of ODOT, and I think 18th. So we try to, like I said, previous meeting, try to get funding, federal grants, state grants, then Metro also joining now. They try to give them matching funds. So hopefully, this will make reality. Colerain Avenue Corridor Plan. And what's it's going to translate this to, once we get this Colerain Avenue corridor study done, make this Colerain Avenue nice and beautiful, it's going to draw the business. And subsequently, we're going to have the great economic development. We already planning for the nice subdivisions coming in Colerain Township. I think this is the time. I know I study Wall Street Journal like a Bible, but after the summer, the economy is going to completely turn around, and we're going to the robust economic development. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen right here in Colerain Township. I promise. So we work hard. We got a great trustees here. We all in the same goal, same vision, and we're gonna administration. So we're gonna make it happen, and this is my number one goal right now, going on Colerain Avenue corridor study. After the meeting, I'll get a report in February meeting, what would the outcome of this meeting from Audit and the congressional people get that, some funding for that. Okay, that's a short, sweet. All right, thank you, gentlemen, and let's move on. Any more you have to add, Matt? The new business.
Yes, sir. The first item of new business comes from our Department of Public Services, and that'll be presented by Ms. O'Connell. Ms. O'Connell?
Yep, sorry,
Hey.
my Zoom wasn't cooperating. Tonight I have before you, gentlemen, a motion to accept the 2020 Township Road Mileage Certificate. This is a certificate issued by the county every year just to certify, and with ODOT, to certify our mileage in the township. Our mileage this year remained the same as last year at 115.067 miles, as we did not accept any new streets in 2020. So the rationale is the signed form is submitted to ODOT per Ohio Revised Code, section 4501.04. The form is prepared by the county engineer and reflects all changes to the total mileage for Colerain Township. At the end of 2020, the total miles certified for the township were 115.067 miles. So I recommend you adopt the motion. We turn that in. This just helps keep track of things, and it also helps with our the funding that we get, that we receive for our roads.
So I'll motion to accept the 2020 Township Mileage Certificate.
I will second it.
Any discussions?
None from me.
None.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank
Roll
you.
call, please. Jeff?
Do you need a vote?
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Thank you, Board. Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
O'Connell. The next items in new business come from the Department of Planning and Zoning and will be presented by Mr. Iona.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. I have several items for the board this evening. A handful of them pertain to setting a motion for a public hearing for zoning commission issues, and then there's some nuisance abatement related items. The first item is a motion to set a public hearing on March 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. for a zoning map amendment on ZA 2021-01. That's a zoning commission application for Abbeytown subdivision. That is a subdivision application that would allow for the construction of 68 detached single-family homes on a site located approximately 1,300 feet west of the intersection of Pippin and Kemper Road. And staff is recommending that you approve this motion.
I'll motion to set a public hearing on March 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Zoning map amendment ZC 2021-01 Abbeytown subdivision.
I will second it.
Any discussions?
No.
Roll call, please, Jeff.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
The second item is a motion to set a public hearing on March 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. for zoning application case number ZA 2021-02. That's a commercial map amendment. This is a map amendment being conducted in service of an economic development project at the crossings of Colerain The proposal is to change the zoning on a very small site to allow for the construction of a off-street parking area that would help the property owner at the crossings of Colerain fill a long vacant commercial space located on the site. Staff is recommending approval of this motion.
A motion to set public hearing on March 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. at the ZA 2021-02 commercial map amendment.
I'll second.
Any discussions?
None.
Roll call, please, Jeff. Thank you.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Okay, the third item is a motion to set a public hearing on March 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. And this is for the assessments for sidewalk maintenance project phase 1. This is the revolving sidewalk fund that we established, that you all established, that would replace sidewalk in low to moderate income areas that were throughout the township. And the project is based on the township performing the work for these properties, and then that work, the cost of that work being covered by the CDBG dollars that we placed into this fund as seed money, and that money gets paid back over the course of I believe it's a 5-year assessment, and then that as that money comes back in, staff and the township will continue to use those funds for future phases of the project. This public hearing is part of a legal requirement for ORC that is necessary for when the project is completed and the repairs are completed. It's a necessary step within ORC before the assessments can be placed on the property taxes. So staff is recommending approval of the motion to set this public hearing.
I'll motion to set public hearing on March 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Assessments for sidewalk maintenance project phase 1.
I second it. Any discussions?
None.
None.
Roll call, please, Jeff.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
The fourth item is a motion to set yet another public hearing on March 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. And that's for zoning text amendment. That's a zoning commission application, number 2020-05. This is a text amendment regulating massage services within Colerain Township. The intent of the text amendment is to ensure that business operators providing massage services within Colerain Township are doing it in a legal means and not in a illegal or sexually oriented manner. Staff is recommending that you set that you approve a motion to set that public hearing.
Your motion,
I'll motion to set a public hearing on, did you want to read it, Raj?
no, go ahead. Okay.
March 9th, 2021 at 7 p.m. zoning text amendment ZA 2020-05 massage parlors.
Second.
Any discussions?
None.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Before I move on, I do want to point out something about the 3 items that were zoning commission applications. Those will be heard at the zoning commission hearing next Tuesday. That's February 16th at 6 p.m. In the trustee chambers. I would also like to point out that those staff reports are readily available for viewing, along with all the other application items in our now pending page on the planning and zoning website. It's not something that we're required to do, but it's something that we like to do in order to provide greater transparency so that anybody who's interested in any of the things happening related to the zoning commission or any of our other boards can access that information and understand more about the applications that are going before the board. If any of you all out there in TV land have any questions, feel free to call the Planning and Zoning Department. The next item I have for the board this evening is a resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement at 9333 Brem Road. And that's again 9333 Brem Road. I'll provide a little background on this. This has been a problem property for a long time. And recently, Mr. Mills ask that we take an all hands on deck approach to solving the issues on this site. And this resolution is the Planning and Zoning Department doing our part to help facilitate compliance and mitigate the issues occurring on the site. Staff is recommending that you adopt this motion and you declare a nuisance and order abatement on the property located at 9333 Brem Road.
The resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement at the property located at 9333 Brum Road.
I will second it.
Any discussions?
None.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
All right.
All right, and the final item I have this evening is, as I discussed earlier, we are already ready to do some nuisance and trash abatements in the township. We've got a handful of frequent flyers and problem properties that we'll kick things off with. This is a resolution for the removal, a resolution declaring nuisance and ordering abatement on the following properties. 9871 Capstan, 7778 Colerain, 9986 Dunraven, 2518 Grant, 7523 Harrison, 3082 Libra, 10040 Menominee, 4519 Pool, 10039 Regency, 2325 Washington, and 9661 Week. Staff is recommending that you adopt this resolution.
I motion that we adopt the resolution to declaring nuisance and ordering abatement on the properties just detailed by Mr. Iona.
I second it. Any discussions?
No.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
All right.
Thank you, board members, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Very good. The next item to new business comes from administration.
Mike.
Mike?
Okay. The
Mike?
next items on new business come from administration, and I'll be handling those. The first item is a resolution to establish trustees and fiscal officers' compensation. The recommendation is to adopt this motion. Ohio Revised Code, Section 505.24 and 507.09 detail that Ohio Township trustee and fiscal officer salaries are set based on an annual budget of their respective township. Compensation adjustments for township officials were amended in the 132nd General Assembly, Senate Bill 296, which provides a 1.75% cost of living adjustment that began in 2019 and extends through 2028, by which only those township officials that are elected or appointed on or after December 27th, 2018 are eligible to receive. So, to sum, this resolution just aligns the township trustees' pay structure with Ohio Revised Code, and again, the recommendation is to adopt.
I motion that we adopt the resolution to establish trustees and fiscal officer compensation.
I second it. Any discussions?
Yes, I was elected in 2017. This does not change my pay or anything, and Raj
The
was
same.
elected the same day. It does not change our pay or anything. This just establishes it. And what was the election date on that?
December 27th, 2018?
And 18, 17 and 18.
So this does not affect, it does not affect any of the three of us because it was already established when Matt was elected, and then, so this just formalizes it with the
Ohio Revised Code.
Ohio Revised Code. So that's my discussion. It does not change my pay or Raj's or Matt's for that matter.
Thank you. Any further discussions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
All right.
Thank you, Board. The next item on the agenda is a resolution to authorize public land auction of a portion of parcel 510-0060-0253. The staff recommendation is to adopt this resolution. There's a portion of the Groesbeck Park which is overgrown and often inhabited illegally, and it is a common location for dumping. In alignment with our strategic plan, the sale of this portion of the park would allow for development of the space and would enhance the overall aesthetics of the area. Nearby property owners have expressed an interest in this property, and this resolution would initiate a public sale process via competitive bid for this portion of township-owned land. The township is opting to utilize a sealed bid portion of Ohio Revised Code, Section 50510. Bids would be due to the township by 3 p.m. on March 3rd, 2021. Bids should be sent to my attention here at 4200 Springdale Road, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45251. Any bids that are received after that 3 p.m. deadline will not be considered. What we're talking about is a .1448 acre parcel that is currently could very accurately be described as overgrown brush and attractive nuisance. Recommendation is to adopt.
We have a resolution to authorize public land auction of a portion of parcel 510-0060-0253.
I'll second.
Any discussions?
None.
None. Oh, roll call, please. Thanks,
Mr.
Joe.
Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Thank you, Board. The next item is a motion to dissolve the Financial Advisory Committee. Staff recommendation is to adopt this motion. The purpose of the FAC is to advise the administration on regarding financial policies for the township. The FAC has not met in nearly 2 years, and staff has led the drafting and modification of various financial policies over those past 2 years. Again, the recommendation is to adopt this motion.
I resolve to authorize the adoption of the motion to dissolve the Financial Advisory Committee.
I second it. Any discussions?
None.
Nope.
I got one. I think it's kind of sad. There's some of the people there, very concerned people for our township, that smart people. I think that government, any government, should utilize the people, the talent they have in the community. Some of the people are the financial, I would say, genius. They retired from the financial work, or some are still working, and getting input from them, it makes a lot of difference. But there's some things we went through. It's necessity. We need to abolish this. But in the long run, someday, I'd like to see this, our community people, talents, we use their talents to make our government better. That's my comment. Anything else?
No, no comments.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Thank you, Board. The next item is a resolution authorizing the adoption of amended appropriations for the year 2020. Recommendation is to adopt this resolution. At its December 8th, 2020 meeting, the Board adopted Resolution 70-20, amending appropriations for 4 funds, including Fund 2901, TIF Kroger, to $179,378.47. At its December 29th meeting, it amended the appropriations again to $177,422.34. The December 29th, 2020 resolution was unnecessary. This resolution clarifies that the appropriation should have been $179,378.47. Recommendation is to adopt this resolution.
The resolution authorizing the adoption of amended appropriation for the year 2020.
Second.
Any discussions?
None.
None.
None? Roll call, please. Yeah.
Mr. Unger?
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal?
Aye.
Mr. Waller?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, Board. The final item of new business this evening is a resolution authorizing the adoption of an amended appropriations for the year 2021. Recommendation is to approve. The amended appropriations are necessary in the CDBG account for 2021 to reflect the conclusion of the sidewalk maintenance program. These dollars were budgeted in 2020. However, payment was not ready until 2021. The recommendation is to adopt.
I motion that we authorize the adoption of amended appropriations for the year 2021.
I second it. Any discussions?
None.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Unger,
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal,
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
Thank you, Board. And there are 5 items on the consent agenda this evening. There are 2 new hires, 2 donations, and a contract. So we are pleased to recommend the hiring of a new police officer. This position of police officer was posted, applications were received, and interviews conducted. A conditional offer of employment was extended to the following individual, Daniel Carusone, which I'm sure is pronounced differently than what I just said. The wage for this job is $30.29 per hour for 40 hours per week. Contingent upon your approval this evening, this new police officer would be eligible to begin work on February 10th, 2021. The second recommended new hire is in our fire department for the role of Fleet Mechanic 1. This position was posted, we received applications and conducted interviews. Conditional offer of employment was extended to the following individual, Corbin Ralston. The wage for this job is $21.76 per hour for 40 hours per week during the season. Contingent upon board approval, he would be eligible to begin work on Monday, February 22nd, 2020. And let's see, the next item on the consent agenda is a contract that I signed with Buckeye Power for the maintenance of our generators. You will notice on our campus we have a series of generators to continue to run essential services. Those do need to be maintained, and that's a specialty maintenance that cannot be performed in-house. We contract with, in this case, Buckeye Power Sales. And then the final 2 items on the consent agenda are in our fire department, and they are both donations. The first donation is to the Department of Fire and EMS in the amount of $100 from Mrs. Rose Scheidler of Havre de Grace, Maryland, in memory of her father, Mr. Tony Dorman, who was a Dunlop volunteer firefighter, and in appreciation for the department's emergency medical services that were rendered to her mother, Ms. Dottie Dorman. And then the final consent item is a donation to the Department of Fire and EMS in the amount of $830.04. That donation was made by Meyer at Stone Creek Boulevard, and it was in the form of a 70-inch television and mounting hardware for the fire headquarters conference room that will be used for meetings and such. The recommendation for all the consent items is to approve.
I motion that we approve the consent items.
I second it. Discussions?
Thank you for the generous donations. And good luck to our new police officer and our new fleet mechanic.
Jeff, is there a police officer on the enforcement?
No, he'll be going into patrol, but hopefully what that does is allow the successful candidate who went through the environmental crimes, who put in for the environmental crimes job that you created, that'll allow that person to move from patrol into the new role. Right now we have a number of vacancies, and so we're trying to fill those. We haven't been able to move that environmental crimes police officer yet because we haven't had the strength in our patrol in terms of numbers.
Sure, thank you.
And I think that's going to make a huge impact.
Yes.
And we've discussed that at previous meetings.
Yes.
With dumping and other issues. We're going to have a person under the direction of the township, and I think the county has one right now, but we're sharing that person with the county. We're going to, and I like I said earlier in my trustee comments, we have made huge progress in the last 3 years of getting things cleaned up. Now we're going to have a full-time investigator to go out and track these things, and the best part is it's paid for with non-local tax funds. It's where's that come from? Drug enforcement funds and from.
The first year will be drug enforcement funds, and then
I don't know if part of that came out of the recycling
that's right.
funds.
Yeah,
Okay, right. So I think it's going to make a huge impact, and this is just one more step we're taking to get there. So
Following up, Dan, I serve the solid waste committee. I requested some, we additionally need another officers. One guy we have, sheriff, he can't control the whole county.
Right.
So am I able to get some funding on yearly basis funding for hiring the officers. Next solid committee meeting, I go there, I'm gonna request for that. They are thinking about hiring, a second person, but this way we can have Brian focus on other one, maybe our officer take other, since this is the largest township, so it might work.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it might work. Thank you. Any more?
No other comments?
Roll call, please. Roll call for the consent items. Okay, is that?
Right. Yeah, we motioned and seconded it.
Mr.
Oh,
Unger?
you want to
Aye.
go for each one?
No, all in one.
All the consent item.
Ms. Rajagopal?
Aye,
And Mr. Waller?
All right.
thank you. The next agenda is a fiscal officer report.
Thank you, Board. The first thing I had tonight was we received a Ohio Division of Liquor Control permit request for Richway Holdings LLC, which is a DBA of Struble Road, Sunoco. There was no objection to that and no request for a hearing for that, so that has been approved. And then just a brief update on public records. So far in 2021, we've received 27 requests through CSR, so HR numbers totaling 27, which would turn out to be about 69 records that have been requested. We have closed since April 1st of 2020, 281 CSR numbers totaling about 702 records that were requested. Again, just 11 from Green Township, but 702. And there are currently only 20 active, so we're working real hard to get caught up. There's only, I think, 3 or 4 left from 2020 that have not been fulfilled. So again, I'd like to thank everybody that helps out. Really, every department has done a great job when requested to send those over, and especially Jeff Weckbach and Glenna Carter do a great job. Not only fulfilling all of these public records, but also dealing with the amount of negativity that they have to deal with in doing so. Just from a handful of people, because typically the vast majority of residents in Colerain Township are very positive. So sometimes I know it can get to them dealing with the negativity of a few, but they deal with it very professionally and quickly. So I just want to thank them again. So, and with that, that's all I have.
Mr. Baker, of the 11 Greene County or Greene Township records requests, does that include your request to see how many records requests they have?
No, I've agreed he doesn't have to include that. So, and that was 11 for all of 2020, not recent. They received 11 in the year of 2020. We closed 702.
I think one was mine, so.
Well, I think about 30% of those are.
You're
Colerain
10% of the problem over there, Matt.
Yep, I sure am. I'm 10% of the problem everywhere.
And if I could, it's kind of ticky-tack a little bit, but on the, I can't remember which one it was, one of the citizens' addresses had mentioned the auditor's office changing under Yost. I would just like to say that David Yost is the Attorney General and not currently the auditor. That would be Keith Faber, but just for the record.
Thank you, Jeff. Do a great job, Jeff.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. The next is executive sessions.
I don't believe that'll be needed this evening.
Okay.
Mr. Rajagopal, before we have a motion for adjournment, I just want to tell folks to keep Austin Menninger and his family in their prayers, and God bless him. What a wonderful, bright-eyed kid going through a lot of trouble right now, and I'll certainly be thinking about him a long time after the meeting. Just wanted to get that out.
Thank you. Thanks.
And Raj, I'd like to make one final
Sure.
comment. I'd like to wish happy birthday to somebody I have known my entire life who has a very significant milestone birthday tomorrow, one that ends in a 0. So good luck to you, and good luck on the next half of your life, which should take you up to 120. So it doesn't matter, Raj. It's probably somebody you know too. That's all. And with that, I would motion.
All right.
With that, I would motion that that we would adjourn.
Thank you. I second it. It was a great meeting. Jeff, roll call, please.
Mr. Unger.
Aye.
Mr. Rajagopal.
Aye.
Mr. Waller.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.